And it looks like we're live on YouTube. This is Male Entrepreneur Podcast, episode number 170. And we are live in 3, 2. All right. Welcome back to the Male Entrepreneur Podcast with your host, Purdeep Sangha, the male entrepreneur himself. This is a podcast for men who win, and we are live on YouTube. And Purdeep, how's it going, man?
Hey Nathan, what's up, man? This is interesting. We're trying out a new format here for those of you who are checking us out on YouTube. We got this new video format going. It's kind of funky. It's awesome. Things are going well. I'm excited for today's episode. I'm excited to bring our guest on and talk about entrepreneurship, but more importantly, what it means to be a real entrepreneur, because there's a lot of people out there working, have businesses, but I wouldn't necessarily say that they're living the life of an entrepreneur, because the life of an entrepreneur is not just working hard, it's working smart, but also having a lifestyle, because that's ultimately what it's about. It's about having the freedom that you want to be able to live the life that you want. So we're going to be talking to a cool guest here, a gentleman by the name of Ronnie Teja. He's also a fellow Indian, and I'm excited to have him on the show. So welcome on the show, Ronnie.
Hey, buddy. What's going on? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's great to have you on the show. You're also, I don't know, should we technically call you a Canadian as well?
Yeah, I'm an Indo-Canadian, I guess. That's the word we use for
it. So, Ronnie, you're an entrepreneur. Can you just give us a brief synopsis in terms of your company, your brand, and how you started it? Like, what was the vision? Where did it come from?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Ronnie Teja. I run a watch brand called brandsio.com. Brandsio.com sells in about 66 plus countries around the world. I started my company January the 1st, 2015. And since then, it's been a joyride looking at different places. The part of the brand message that we convey to customers is do something good, do something that makes somebody smile today. So do something good, do good for people around you, and have that sort of mentality that to make somebody's day. I mean, of course, that's a very Canadian thing, but we try and market it as a slogan for the company, which people can use globally.
Which is really interesting, because when you think about watches, you don't necessarily connect it to that, giving back and contributing and being, a great citizen in your society, for example. So what brought you to that?
Well, one of the first, when we were making the watch brand, one of the things that I said, you can make them at the end of the day. So you can make something that is you got to look at the product, and you'll be able to sell something on a lower price point. But we said we wanted to be a bigger brand than that. So in our case, what a bigger brand meant for us was actually cause marketing. So cause marketing for me, so something that I hold quite near and dear to me is like, supporting elephants, for example. So when I was in South Africa a few years ago, within the first couple of hours of me visiting Kruger National Park, we actually saw a dead rhino that had been shot and poached by a crossbow. Same thing with elephants. So that's something that I picked up, and I said, look, this is something that is very near and dear to my heart. So for anybody who comes to our site, buys a watch, 10% of all our proceeds go towards saving the elephants in Asia and Africa. Another thing is, Orphan Dog Foundation. So we have a few in Thailand, we have a few in Canada, where we usually donate 10% of all our proceeds to those organizations. So I mean, anybody can start a watch brand, but it takes a few people to say, what is the sort of experience you want to get when you're buying it. You want to, it's good to buy a product. It can be very transactional, but in the long run, do you want to just sell a product, or do you want to sell an experience at the end of the day?
I think that's awesome, because on two fronts. Because experience is important. That's one of the things I think that differentiates business, like the high performing businesses from the average businesses. But on the other side, I think, you're my kind of guy, because what you just talked about, two particular things, that's kind of my end goal as well. So helping animals. I'm a huge lover of natural, you can say, wildlife, like elephants, rhinos, endangered species, but also dogs as well. There's so many things that are happening, the wet dog market, for example, all that kind of stuff that's happening in terms of abuse of animals and torture of animals. So I commend you for that work, man, because that is awesome. And we should
Thanks,
talk
buddy.
after
Appreciate it.
offline as well, because that is one of my big missions in life as well. So for your business, right? You have an interesting story. You talked about you came to Canada, you were picking blueberries, and we were laughing. We were laughing because that's how I grew up. I came from humble backgrounds, picking cherries and apples as well. So I know that feeling that you went through. But you're an entrepreneur now. What took you? Like, what was that turning point for you, where you said, okay, I'm going to go from working in a job to having my own business?
Well, I'd say it was there's a couple of things that happened in my life. The first thing was I actually got a job working at Best Buy, where I was the chief digital buyer for the media. So anytime that Best Buy was running commerce or retail campaigns, I was the guy who was doing all the digital marketing for them. And there was some quarter where we made like some insane amount of revenue, something like $220 million for the whole quarter. We'd broken all goals, we'd broken everything else out there. And I said, okay, is there a way? So I went to my boss and I said, hey, look, we've hit our goals, we've achieved goals. Is there a way that we can actually get the team a bonus for it? And the answer that was given to me was pretty unsatisfactory. They said, oh, we're going to lay off people next month because the revenues projected did not match the revenues that we wanted it to be. So essentially, I got denied a bonus. My team got denied a bonus because somebody had put on some insane numbers, like pie in the sky figures, which didn't really work well for us. So that was my first realization. The second realization that came to me was when I was interviewing for a job at this retailer called MEC, where basically I reached the final stages of my interview, and the person who I was supposed to be interviewing with basically turned around and told me at the end of the day that I wasn't fit for the job. And the reason what they said so was because I changed my jobs too often, right? Mm-hmm. So because I changed my jobs too often, I'm a flight risk. So I don't understand where that sort of mentality is coming in from. And because if in my field, people change their jobs every year and a half. So if people are changing the jobs that quickly, like, I don't know why is it a bad thing to actually change your jobs that often?
Yeah, that's interesting. So what would you say is, your secret? If there, maybe I shouldn't say secret, but yeah, can you hear us? Ronnie, are you there? This is the joys of international podcasting.
Yeah, really bad internet connection, it looks like, because we can still hear him, but I don't think he can hear us, or we can't see his image moving.
Well, hopefully he'll join us again. But for those of you out there listening, I think this is an important, you can say, learning from this, because look, here's a gentleman that came from India, in a very short time frame, built an international business. So, Ronnie, are you back with us now?
Yeah, my apologies for that. I kept speaking to the camera. I didn't know what was happening back then.
No, it's all good, man. It's all good. But let's get into the kind of the meat and the bones of being an entrepreneur, because you talked about working on your business versus in your business. So can you just give people talk about that a lot, but what do you think is a true secret to that, or the true discipline behind working on your business? Because it's easy to get pulled in.
Yeah, it is. I mean, my first burnout happened about 3 months into the business. Essentially, what happened was I was the customer service guy, I was the marketing guy, I was, wearing all the different hats. So within the first 3 months, I completely burned out. So that's where I sort of learned that you need to be able to take some rest. You need to be able to have processes in place and everything else. That was my first step of the journey, is understanding, I have a work life and I have a, the like me time. Could be going to go play squash, going to the gym or something else like that. Because for the first 3 months, I didn't pay attention to my health. So I'd probably gained another like 30, 40 kilos just working and, not even exercising for the first 3 or 4 months. So that, of course, led to mental burnout. That led to a lot of other things. Now I'm at that stage where, where I was working 80 hours in the business, and I'm only working about 15 to 20 hours. So there's a big difference. I've cut down my time that I'm working in the business to a quarter of what it used to be. The second thing that I would say is, when I'm talking about working on the business, it's not about like looking at, say, for example, putting your processes in place or putting a hiring manager in place, et cetera, et cetera. The team will run itself. My goal as to work on the business is to see opportunities to expand the business. So it could be like going to South Africa and we're launching a watch brand in South Africa, launching e-commerce stores in Southern Africa or Sub-Saharan Africa, as the market growth there is pretty high. Launching e-commerce stores in South America, for example, or looking at the next CEO who could replace me to run the company itself. So I'm completely hands off, right? So these are the sort of strategic decisions that have to be made. And the system that I actually use, or what I highly recommend that you guys look into, is called the Entrepreneurial Operating System, or EOS. So it's written by a guy called Gino Wickman. And there's 2 books I recommend that you read out from there. The first one is Traction. Traction's a little bit dry, but it takes a while to get to it. But the one I started with was called Get a Grip. So Get a Grip is a lot better in the sense that it actually talks about a company and a case study and everything else. So you'll benefit a lot more from doing that. So that is, it's a book. Of course, you can't put it into practice immediately. What I would do is I would also hire something called an EOS consultant, because there's these people who actually do that for you. And I hired somebody like this in my company 2 years ago. And that's the reason I was able to go from working 80 hours a week or 70 hours a week or whatever that magic number is, to doing what I am now, where I'm like, having a better lifestyle and everything else. So highly recommend that.
Can you do the listeners a favor and kind of explain what role that person plays in your business?
Sure. So this person that I had, who is an EOS consultant, is twofold. So it's basically, imagine like you have some sort of a HR director who comes in. The job is to come in and make a fully functional team. So what that essentially means is, if I used to have a team only in the Philippines, which is not really good in the long run, because what would happen with that is you're looking at a whole team that's based in one place. So what we did was we said, okay, look, we need to break up the customer service team. We need to make it more global. So we found employees in Nicaragua, we found people in Panama, we found people in Argentina, Venezuela, Colombia, Bosnia, Serbia, Kenya. So basically, you're getting where I'm going with this. So we actually made a fully distributed team, so the company could be running 24/7. That was point number one, right? We need to have a playbook in place. Like, what is this company about? A playbook is only 5 pages. It's not like a massive, thick manual you get from Best Buy or anything else about your HR practices and policies. We treat our employees like adults. We trust them. However, we have like a red card and a yellow card, and like a green signal, which is basically like, if you ever do have a tendency to do something wrong or anything else, you'll get a yellow card. We'll give you corrective action. And at the end of the day, if you do the same thing again, well, you get a red card. See you later. You're out. That's one of the things that we started with. The secondary thing that this person actually did for us was to come in and actually assess everybody's roles and needs and wants in the company. So, for example, as a CEO, I don't have a pulse on everybody, because it's a completely distributed team. And because it's a distributed team, we don't get to meet as often as we should be. So what we need to do is we need to assess, like, what is a bonus structure we look at for employees? What is that the employee wants most? So, for example, we found out in a company, some of our employees just preferred handwritten notes from me. So I write thank you cards to them, or send them Christmas cards and anything else. That was the motivation. It wasn't a bonus. It wasn't the money. It wasn't anything else. It was just sending that kind of stuff. Whereas for some employees, the money mattered. But still, at the end of the day, what I realized through this consultant was the fact that the best talent that you actually have to find does not actually live in the States or Canada or the UK or Australia or any English-speaking country as you think. The best talent that you can be found which is true for a marketing director in a company, is in a small village called Nakuru in Kenya. Somebody who actually emailed me under an alias called Emma, so I would give them a job, and basically has grown to be the marketing director of the company in the last 2 years. So these are the things that was pretty eye-opening for me. I would definitely say that.
Yeah, I think that's, Nathan, I'm going to throw it over to you here in a little bit, because I think that is absolutely eye-opening. Like, we have team members that, similar to you, that are in different areas, and you wouldn't think that these people have the expertise. But here's the thing, like, it's really interesting to see the level of skill that they have in a different perspective. And I appreciate what you're doing, because in being able to employ people around the world and have them on your team and trust them to be able to do that work, not very many entrepreneurs would do that. And that speaks loudly, because that is true leadership.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, I'm not saying I was perfect from day one, but there's a really good book about it that your listeners might want to check out. It's called No Rules Rules, which is by Reed Hastings, the founder of Netflix. So I do recommend that book. I'm actually reading it right now, so that's why it's in the top of my mind. Yeah,
it's really interesting. Netflix has an interesting culture in terms of what they do, right? Treat everybody like adults and let them kind of run the show. Give them what they need. And that's important. The culture is so important. But I've been hogging here. So Nathan, you got any questions for Ronnie?
Yeah, just one question. Talking about Netflix and talking about your business, a lot of times finding which avenue is going to be where your people are at, or which avenue is going to give you your best return on your ad spend, or your marketing expenses. A lot of times businesses have to play around and figure out, okay, our audience is not here. Our audience is over here. And with so many different avenues to tap into, a lot of times businesses, they're either tapping into the wrong one or they're tapping into too many at once. And what would you say was some of the things that you learned as you went along and figured out this is where we need to be putting our attention as far as reaching out and finding new customers?
Well, I mean, so 80% of a budget goes into things that we already know that work for us. So be it like Google ads, be it like shopping ads, be it like Amazon or whatever, right? 20% of our budget is always for testing. So in 2015 or 2014, before we allocated 10% of our budget to influencers, saw a really good ad spend coming, return on ad spend coming out of it. So we said, okay, let's just scale influencers as quickly as possible. Then came Instagram, where they started limiting your reach. We put a lot of money into Instagram as well, but we also saw that they started limiting the reach, the organic reach, and just the ad reach, because they wanted as many advertisers as possible. Then we said, okay, let's take that money, let's shift it to influencers. Didn't work on the influencers. Okay, then let's shift it to TikTok. Not working on TikTok ads right now. Let's shift it to TikTok influencers. So you always have to have like that 80-20 principle, and you have to have you got to take chances at the end of the day, right? I mean, you're running a business, so there are going to be losses. Some of these things are going to work out. I mean, there's avenues where I've lost $20,000-$30,000 like in a month just from making a wrong choice or wrong decision, and the whole team has owned up to it. But it's an important learning lesson, because we know in the long run what's going to work for us and what's not going to work for us. So, I mean, it's a $20,000 lesson, fair enough. I mean, you can look at how other people are doing it. That's another one, because I'm a part of this forum called the E-commerce Fuel, which is mainly for e-commerce entrepreneurs. So highly recommend this, guys, where you can ask these questions, where people who've tried and tested it. You always look at your fellow entrepreneurs to say, okay, look, what's working for you and everything else. People are pretty open about it, right, at the end of the day. So if influencers are working out for you, well and good. If depending on your sector, depending on your niche. So yeah, that's usually the decision tree that I would be able to take. But you have to be able to fail at the end of the day. I mean, there's nothing wrong with failure. It's a valuable lesson that you've learned at the end of the day.
And so where's your brand going? Where is Brandzio going right now? Like, what's the end vision?
Well, we've scaled to an 8-figure brand. The idea is to scale it to hopefully, a mid 8 figures if possible, or high 8 figures if we can. And we want to launch in 120 countries in the span of the next 15 months. So from there on out, the next goal is to actually have a retail presence. So for example, if you look at like airports and like certain malls and kiosks and everything else, where you can actually be a watch brand of choice. So people are walking. I think Skagen does it really well. That's a good brand. I mean, Movement is also getting into that same business where we're taking a step back and going into the bricks and mortar rule of the business, which I think is extremely good in the long run, because your research sometimes does not start just from the internet. It has to be something that you've seen somewhere, or maybe you've seen this particular brand and then you keep seeing flashes of it. So there's a study that I think Baymard Institute did, which is like for people to recognize your brand in today's day and age, you have to see it at least 18 to 20 times before you actually take note of what the brand is. So we want to end up being in that sort of phase where people can actually know the brand and know what it's all about, et cetera, et cetera.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing. I think what you're doing is awesome. I love what your brand represents. I love your story. I love you in terms of, the person that you are, because you can tell you're a genuine person. So, and being on that entrepreneurial journey that you've been on, I appreciate 110%. So thank you for the work that you're doing. And hopefully, when you're back in Canada, maybe we can get together. I'll be in BC this summer, so maybe we'll have an opportunity to connect.
We'll love to catch up. Gonna go fishing, man. I miss fishing.
Oh, dear. Right on.
Real quick before we're out of here, Ronnie, can you tell people what your brand is and where they can find out more about that? And then maybe if people want to link up with you and talk to you specifically, is that a possibility as well?
Sure. I mean, my brand's called brandzio.com. It's a watch brand. If you want to talk to me, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, Ronnie Teja. You can find me on Instagram if you want, Ronnie S. Teja. It's quite easy.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate you coming on. Purdeep, if people want to check out more episodes of the podcast, where's the 2 best places to go?
Well, you can simply go to mailpodcast.com or youtubeformen.com.
All right, man. And until next time, we will catch you later.
Till next time. Thanks, Ronnie.